am so excited to be joined today by Keith Finger. Hi.
Hello. Good to be here, Lisa.
I'm so glad that you agreed to come on and chat with us. And the more I about you, the more fascinated I am to learn even more and more. You're quite an inspiring guy.
Oh, well, thank you. It's very kind.
Little bit of troll, a little bit of life upending, a little encouragement, or a lot of encouragement of others to burn the boat.
Yes, to burn the boat, to do what lights them up. You've just got one life. You got to live it.
Love that. The first time we worked together, and the first time I heard you say burn the boat, I thought, yeah, by golly, let's burn the boat. Yes. And then I got to think, oh shit, but how will I get back to shore? And I don't know how to swim. And what about sharks? And I have so wanted to explore this conversation with you since about what burning the boat means to you. What's that all about?
Oh, gosh. Well, the phrase actually has historical references. It goes back to the time of Cortez in Mexico and even back to the Phoenicians. And it has to do with military commanders telling their troops, that was back in the day where everybody traveled by ship. And so you would get to where you were going, and the commanders would tell them to burn the ships so they couldn't go back. So there was no option of failure. Only success was an option. And so in my own life several years ago, I was at a point where I felt I needed to make a big change. And the only way I was going to do that and not hold on to the past was by burning the boat. And those are actually the words that came out of my mouth when I would tell people that I was looking to make this change, that I was looking to burn the boat. And I've just kind of been using that as a description ever since of who I am and what I do, and the business name and what I encourage others to do.
Kind of the idea, not looking in the rearview mirror, because you're not going that way.
Right.
Forward.
Yeah, and not only I'm just gonna pop my volume up a little bit. There we go. Not only just not looking in the rearview mirror, but if you can actually make a break with it in some way. So that it's not there as a life ring. It's not there as, well, I could always do this, because in the back of your mind, you might always be thinking, well, it could actually hold you back, because you always see it as an option, as the safety net. It's sort of like going without a net, in a sense.
Love that. So would you mind telling folks a little about you? I know you've spent a lot of time in marketing and how to hold life before what you're doing now in terms nationally, but just a little bit about you, what you offer to others who work with you.
Yeah. By the way, I'm getting a little bit of feedback here. Don't know if you're hearing it as well. Okay. My experience started off, my background was marketing. I took one marketing class in college. It was one of those things where I just sort of, I wouldn't say I fell into it. I liked it. But I just sort of went off in that direction. And I think, like a lot of people, they don't do it with a lot of forethought when they're young. And so I was okay with it. I liked it. And then as I went along, I had some experience with international travel. And I remember I was just thinking about this yesterday, about my first trip to, away by myself, like as an adult, was to the South Pacific for 2 weeks, and it just blew me away. I remember coming back and just feeling like, I remember that week at work, I just could not concentrate. And it had nothing to do with the jet lag. It had just what the experience had done to me. And I was lucky to, several years after that, get a job with a lot of international travel. Like, my responsibilities were strictly international. And I just ate that up. It was just the best. I call it the best job I ever had. I was always someplace new, someplace different, because of the amount, because of what international travel costs. I was always away over a weekend to try and stretch out, what I was doing. So I had time to myself, and it was just the most incredible experience that I ever had. And that was always in the back of my mind when I had that job and one after that had some international responsibilities. I was thinking to myself, Keith, there's something about this. I mean, my dream has been to live in another country, and it took root during that time. And so I sort of fast forward to a few years ago, and I had gone from working for myself to working for somebody else, and I was just really unsatisfied with the way it was going, and then what the future might be if I stayed on this route. And I had gone with my daughter, who at the time was a college freshman, and she just graduated in May. And we had gone on a trip to Cuba. And had a very difficult job. The company was having its challenges. I remember sitting on the runway on the way back on the Delta flight, and just thinking about, Keith, how much longer do you want to put up with this BS of a life? And what's it going to do? Are you going to go out and just just keep holding on until there's nothing there? Like, what's your plan? And I thought to myself, sitting there, I remember actually thinking, Keith, you've got to burn the boat. You have got to create Keith 2.0 and burn the boat and just do what's in your heart. And the next year or so was very adventurous. I gave myself a year to figure out what Keith 2.0 might be, and worked with a couple different people who unfortunately interpreted it as meaning I was looking for a new job. And it wasn't. There was something that was deeper there, and they did not recognize that. And so I did not work with them for very long. And part of what was going to happen in Keith 2.0 is I was going to celebrate. So I said, a year after Cuba, I am going to be in Keith 2.0. And I'm going to celebrate that with a 2-month trip away, and then I will start doing this other thing. I don't know what it is, but I want to do a long trip and just sort of immerse myself internationally. It took me some time to find somebody to help me through this journey, the emotional journey, the trip journey I could figure out, and I loved doing that part. And when I found somebody, she said to me, Keith, I don't want to help you now. I need to help you when you come back, because you're going to be a different person after 2 months away. And I was like, wow.
Whoa. Yeah.
That's interesting. And I cannot disagree with you. So I pushed back my entire schedule. And so I ended up, first I went away. So that job they ended up not doing well. And I was, I got cut. In fact, it was, at the time I was one of 2 people who were getting paid in the US anyway. So I went down to 1 person. And so I ended up leaving there, and it was a good thing, actually. I had planned on it, but it happened at a good time. First I went to Sri Lanka for a few weeks, which was incredible. It was an incredible experience. And then I came back, and about a month later, I went away for 2 months, starting off in Morocco and ending up in Japan. And it was just the trip that it was supposed to be just a trip. Just at the time I thought about it was going to be sort of this celebration of Keith 2.0. I wasn't yet Keith 2.0, so it was sort of just a trip to enjoy, but it ended up being this trip of lots of epiphanies and growth, and just incredible experiences and lots of learning, and just the greatest thing I've done, and just incredible. I don't know what other word I could use.
So it sounds like maybe it planted even different seeds, Keith 2.0, that you might not have seen before.
Oh, for sure. Yes, it did. In fact, yes, because I knew I wanted to change. I really didn't think about what it could be. I think I was thinking about it in a very mechanical sense, like find, do your assessments and take these tests, and you'll learn that you should be doing this instead. And I learned quickly that doesn't always work. And so what ended up happening was not only did I have this growth of enjoying these conversations with other people that maybe I would have shied away from before, with strangers and such, but I started learning that I wanted to have a closer connection to folks, more of an emotional connection to the world, and a greater desire to serve.
Mm.
And this actually, that last part actually took place. It's funny. I was on an airplane. I talk about this in my bio. It's on my website. And I was flying from the capital of Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar, to Beijing. I had taken the Trans-Siberian Railroad from Moscow to Mongolia, and was now flying from Mongolia to Beijing for the next. I was in China for a week, and I was flipping through the in-flight magazine, and yes, Mongolian Airways has an in-flight magazine, and there was a story of a gentleman who was the head of World Vision, the World Vision nonprofit NGO for Mongolia. And it talked about the work that the nonprofit does and about his family and how they'd moved all over the world. And he had children when he was living in South Sudan, and his wife helped raise their kids. And I was just like fascinated by this life. And in the moment, I actually sat up and like just stared ahead for a moment, reading this article about what this gentleman was doing and the work in his life. And something like clicked or snapped in my head. I don't know what it was, but it was like, Keith, this is the life that you want to be. You want to live. You want to have this type of adventure. You want to have this type of giving to others. And it's funny, when I got back to home, because that was about maybe halfway through my trip, I figured I could go online and find that article quite easily. And it wasn't online. I had to send a Facebook message to Mongolian Airways, and somebody took pictures of it with their cell phone and emailed them to me. But it was just an incredible. The whole thing was just incredible. That's all I can say. It just filled me up in such a way, and it made me realize that we're only here for so long, and that if you put off what you want to do for too long, there's a chance that you won't be able to do it. That you won't be healthy enough. You won't be mobile enough. You won't be whatever it is enough. And that if you don't do it while you can do it, even if it means sacrificing now, I didn't want to be somebody on their deathbed who had regrets. Like I'd had some regrets in my life for things I wish I had done differently. This was a big thing. I didn't want to have that.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds to me like you talked about trying to figure out the next steps. Very brain logic oriented, process, which most of us do. But early on in the conversation, you said something about your heart. Something that filled your heart, or I can't remember the exact line, but it seems like there was maybe a switch for you, that 18 inches brain to the heart, which can be the hardest journey to take, but that somewhere in travel, you took that journey too, and that reshaped part of you. Would that be fair?
Oh, for sure. Yes, exactly. And I think part of my transformation was I had throughout a lot of my life a very strong inner critic, which denied me a lot of the things that I wanted to express. For feeling like Keith, you don't want to say this. That's not important. And you're not good enough. You're like, it's sort of like a little bit of the imposter syndrome, a little bit of self-criticism. A lot of people have it, and mine was pretty strong.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yep. And what happened is, through this trip and through some other things that happened subsequently, even and before, combination of things like therapy and some other training that I've been through, I've learned to access. I think the trip helped me to understand and access my heart, and that only made it easier to express it later on and continue to do it. So I am talking literally, I am actually talking in a way now that probably 3 or 4 years ago, I would have found very difficult to be this open and to be this vulnerable. I think that's a good word. I had a lot of trouble being vulnerable. And that travel and this journey, both the emotional journey and the physical journey, both helped me. I would say let the real Keith shine through.
Mm. And the world is a better for it.
Well, thank you. Oh, I'm humbled, but to hear you say that, thank you.
Now I'm actually, I just want to see if I blush, but I was on your blog and I was reading about a little adventure in a news colony about your RV adventure and why travel is so important to your growth. And I'll bet there's some spiritual aspect to that perhaps if you'd be willing to go into that. But it also feels like have this open sense of curiosity and are willing to explore even when it's uncomfortable, like in the nudist RV park.
Yes. So I do like to be a little bit uncomfortable. I see it more as exploration.
Mm-hmm.
And about 20 years ago, I realized that once I get used to doing something, I get bored. And for a long time, again, the negative, the negative inner critic was like, Keith, there's something wrong with you. Why can't you just stick with something? And I felt like once I got used to it, once I became comfortable, once I knew how to do a job, it was just like, I needed this constant stimulation, this constant flow. And I felt for much of my life that because other people didn't seem like to need that, and I did, that there must be something wrong with me. And so that kind of, was something that I beat myself up about. But I learned that I have this sense of adventure, and I have this, what it is, it's a need for learning and a need for a constant flow of information. And for me, that comes through, well, first of all, I spend most of my time, I'm not a big TV watcher, but it's mostly documentaries. I'm probably the number one PBS watcher out there. That's most of what I watch is just to learn, just interesting stuff. And travel is always full of new things, of experiences. And I don't go on tours. When I say tour, I mean I don't go on an entire trip that's based on a tour. Right. I might go on a tour of a walking tour of someplace when I get there, but I plan everything myself. I know where I want to be. I do my research. In fact, for me, the travel, the research and the anticipation is almost as fun as the actual trip. Like I have a notebook that I keep of all my planning. And I'll look through that and I will just it's almost like I'm back on the trip of writing down, what parts of town do I want to stay in, and what are the different, I usually stay in a hostel, not in a group room, in a private room. I'm older than that now. But I think about where I want to be and what I want to see, and that anticipation just fills me up almost as much as the actual trip does. And so doing things that stretch my comfort zone and make me feel, I don't want to say uncomfortable, but just make me expose me to new ideas and new thinking is something which I really look forward to. So the thing with the RV, I was supposed to actually this year, I was supposed to be in, so after I went to Peru, in the last year, it's been an incredible time. So almost a year ago this time, I was in Hong Kong and Vietnam. Last December, I went with my kids to Ecuador. And then January, February, I went on a trip to Peru. I was supposed to have gone to Myanmar, but that's when COVID was kicking up. Myanmar is close to China. I was supposed to fly through China. So I canceled that and went to Peru instead and had a wonderful time in Peru.
Great.
Then I had some other things I was supposed to do, go to Chile, meet my daughter in Asia after her graduation, this fall. I was supposed to be back in Peru. So I was feeling really restless. Like I would make a bad prisoner because I need to get out. That's probably why I'm law abiding. So because I need to be out. I need to be out. And so I decided to go and just rent this RV and just get out. I was like, I've got to get out. I need to explore. And so I rented what one would call a camper van, and it was all enclosed, or you could go totally off the grid if you wanted to, or you could hook up at a campsite. And my first time ever doing that, and it was very interesting. I'd never gone camping in an RV before. And so on the way back, I went down to see my mother in South Florida, socially distanced, of course, and stayed a couple places on the way back. And so I only arranged this trip like a couple few days before I decided to go. So I was just sort of making arrangements as I went, and I've never even arranged a campground. Like, what do I look for? I don't know. So one place one more set of a couple nights I had to figure out, and so I Googled best campgrounds in Florida or something like that. And so I'm reading this site, and it goes, if you want to do something unusual, you might want to try a nudist RV park. And I was like, oh,
these exist.
Okay. Why not? And so I read up a little bit about it and decided to give it a try. And it was, I grew up in South Florida. And so, the whole idea of like nudist colonies, like we used to call them a nudist colony. And, when you're a teenage boy, you think a nudist colony is nothing but, debauchery. And I knew that it wasn't like that in real life, but I didn't really know what it really was until I showed up. And then it was much different than I thought, and in an extremely positive way.
Nice.
What I would say is that, first of all, as I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm thinking about I can feel my clothes on my body. Mm-hmm. And we don't think about that. But when it's gone, it's a totally different feeling, especially when you're supposed to be wearing it when you're out. And I remember the first time I had to be without clothes in that surrounding, and it hit me like, well, Keith, your modesty is due to the belief that when you're out in public, you're supposed to be clothed, but you're at a place where you're not supposed to. So it's sort of like was toying with my head. Like, you're allowed to be this way. You're supposed to. And so not being like that was it was a totally new experience. And it was really kind of liberating, I would say, in a sense. It wasn't at all sexual, and people were just hanging out. I kept social distance, and it was actually clothing optional, except around the pool where you had to be without clothes, or as they said, you had to have skin in the game.
I love it. A whitetail.
Yeah, a white. Yes. So people who are new or who haven't been out in a while are called whitetails for. So I was a whitetail, but it was just an incredible feeling. And also, I had gone into it with the preconceived notion that people who were nudists or would visit a place like a nudist resort were liberal, progressive, hippies. And I found that there were people across the political spectrum. There were people there with Trump signs on their RVs. There were people who were ex-military or current military, first responders. So I learned that it was more of a sort of a lifestyle than it was something based on a political belief necessarily. And that was real interesting as well. So it was great. It was really great. And going hiking, they had a bit of a walking trail, hiking trail, and doing that in the woods was really just real freeing. It was just an incredible experience.
So liberation, I'm guessing that there, especially there was probably that vulnerability that you talked about before. That was, did it feel vulnerable? Did it feel, I mean, sometimes liberation, freedom, and exposure can feel a little daunting too.
Yeah. And in fact, the first time when I walked when I first went to the pool, I'm like, well, I'm telling you what, I'm going to wear my bathing suit to the pool, and then when I get there, I will take it off. Because I was a little shy. But I thought, Keith, you know what? I got halfway to the pool, and I'm like, Keith, you did not come here to not experience it the way people experience it. So you're going to walk your butt back to the camper van, and you're going to take off those shorts, and you're going to walk back to the pool in the buff. And I did that, and walked in, laid my towel down, laid down on the chaise, and was just like, wow. I mean, when you have a new experience that you've pushed through, that is like a real strong feeling. You probably have done that when you did something for the first time and you're just like, wow,
Yeah.
wow, that was something. And that's what I was feeling in that moment.
Yeah. So I think it would probably be easier in a situation where you didn't know anybody, because you didn't really know anybody there. Right? And
Right.
yeah. I was the girl who wouldn't wear a bathing suit on a beach, heaven forbid. And, yeah, I mean, I always wore the board shorts and the t-shirt or whatever. And I don't know, anyway, I think it was in January of this year, I went to a writers conference in Santa Fe, and then there was a little Japanese spa, 10,000 something or other. I don't remember the name, but outside of Santa Fe had a big, like, group hot tub. It wasn't a hot tub. It was an outdoor, built into the hill kind of hot tub type. And of course, I on purpose didn't remember to take my bathing suit, because I thought I was going to get out of this entire experience. Like, I don't even modesty.
Right.
Yeah. Until all the ladies and the one fella are like, oh, well, you didn't bring your suit. Okay, hey, we'll go nude then. Like, what? No. I mean, my biggest fears, completely biggest fears, right there in my face. So I must courage. I'm like, fine. And did this thing. And there were a couple of things I noticed. Number one, all fear I was making up in my head. I mean, it was just all BS. That voice you talk about, it sounds like the voice encouraging you to take off your trunks was Keith 2.0 voice instead of the original version of Keith's voice. And so that was the voice that was like, oh, come on. But the other thing that I found here in this group of people that I care about deeply. I mean, these are friends and colleagues, and just how incredibly supportive and encouraging and so not judgmental at all, and just the crap we make up in our heads that keep us from experiencing life.
For sure. Yeah. That thing in our head, that's our saboteur. And our saboteur, we think it's helping us. It thinks it's helping us, but it's really hurting us. And what we need to access instead is what's called our sage. And our sage is it's kind of like our true north, the thing that's got our back.
It almost sounds like the difference between ego and soul in a lot of ways too, just in terms of ego being that part that wants to keep us safe, but often also keeps us small, versus soul, which is like, oh, what if it was great? What if, the expansive versus constrictive.
Yes, for sure. And in fact, it's funny you mentioned ego, because many times people go down a certain road in life and they're pushed by their ego to do that. Mm-hmm. They think that life means, or having a certain career means having a big house and having bigger and bigger cars, bigger and bigger houses, bigger and bigger boats. And they have to have this expression of greatness through their work in a certain way and through possessions. And they get to a certain point in life where they undergo this thing. The writer Wayne Dyer called it the shift, where we learn that we need to have more meaning in our life, and we need to push the ego aside, because the ego is very short-sighted. And also the ego moves the goalposts, because if you've ever, gotten that big thing and you've achieved this thing, you can enjoy it for about 2 days, because then your ego says, all right, that's not a big deal. You need to go for the next thing now. You need the bigger car, the next promotion, the next raise. And so it's always moving the goalposts and never letting you enjoy, because it's really the false you. This is the soul, which is, or the sage, which is the real you, and wants you to have meaning and connection.
Love that. When you work with people, is that the kind of thing that you help them do, is to recognize when the saboteur is taking the lead versus this taking the lead, and kind of shift that power dynamic within, what they're allowing to lead?
Yes, that usually comes up at some point, because they'll talk about some reason why they're afraid of making a change, or they're concerned about it. And we'll have a little bit of a conversation about, is this something which you know for a fact, or something that you're just worried about? And then you can discern whether or not it's them talking or their saboteur talking. And we'll get a little bit deeper on that, and on some strategies to keep the saboteur at bay at those times where you need your soul or your sage to be the one that's for you.
That's good stuff. Part of in conversations and part of your bio, the whole idea of helping people transition from a career or a job that drains the life out of them, soul sucking in a way, to one that lights them up from the inside, that really feeds their spirit rather than drains their spirit. Seems like that's that interest, and or part of your interest, and what you're willing and interested in, and able in your own right to help others do. What's kind of the first step of that road? How do people get started in having the to pursue that path?
Besides calling me?
Yes. Calling you is the first step.
Well, what I usually do is I like to start off and kind of get a baseline. So we'll go through some exercises and have a deep discussion about things around values and peak experiences, and where things are in their life, on different aspects of their life. And there's some very good visualizations that I do to help bubble up. I like to use the phrase bubble up. So to help bubble up these things that they really believe in, that are real important to them, that they have been suppressing because they thought either they're not important, or they're not pertinent, or for whatever reason, but they're part of who they are and what they believe. And if they want to be happy in something, in life, even if you want to be happy in life, you need to do what's in your heart, and you need to do what you believe in. So, there's a diagram I like to use that says who you are, what you do, what you believe in. And those things work in a loop. And if you don't do what you believe in, there's this big disconnect in your life. There's a lack of coherence. So being able to live, your truth. And I understand that there's times in people's lives where, they have to do what they have to do. And I've been there. But in the end, to be able to live your values and make sure that those are expressed in many different ways is real important.
Absolutely. And when we're living outside of our values, when we're not aligned with our values, it's like that takes a hit on our psyche that we might not even consciously recognize. But as someone who's aware of what my values are, and aware when I make choices that are outside of those, man, it really does take a hit. And when we can align, and whether it's career, relationship, how we actually live, life, can align those things, our values, and with the sage and the more expansive part of us, that feels so different.
Yes. Oh gosh. So what you're describing there is actually a state of flow, a state of real intense engagement, where you almost, if you've ever been doing something and you enjoyed it so much that you almost lost track of time, and the next thing you know, you're like done doing it, and you just feel like you've just washed over in this sense of satisfaction and enjoyment. That's one of the things that I talk about with people, is to understand what are these things that give you that sense of engagement. Because we go through our day having these little things, but we don't connect them to our larger life. So being able to understand what are these small things that you do that you like, that maybe you don't think about them as part of your job or part of your domestic life, but you enjoy them, and to understand why that is, then you can help make them a bigger part of that, instead of just minimizing it or not even realizing it.
I love that. And it seems that even taking those little things and allowing them to grow, even in the mundane, one of the things, at being a flow traveler, I found that on solo adventures, it's like I'm closer to that true part of myself, or I allow myself to move more into the, brave, courageous, adventurous, open-hearted, curious, part of me. And I come back and I'm sitting in my own little space. Sometimes it's harder to hold on to that, to the parts of me I glimpse on the road versus the parts of me that come out more when I'm sitting at a desk.
I understand 1,000,000%.
How do you integrate the two? That's part of my Lisa 2.0 year. I'm in the midst of mine right now, trying to build who am I? What am I becoming next? And realizing I used to fight against this water feeling, being who I am in the middle of rural Oklahoma, always felt pretty uncomfortable, fish out of water stuff. But then I go to eat last November on a trip by myself, and talk about a fish out of water, the one blonde girl within hundreds of miles, but I felt more there. And so how can I feel the most me here and live that place, not just when I'm on the, like, from right here? And that's part of my journey. I'd love it if you have any suggestions.
Well, it's funny what I have found, because I get that same feeling. I come back and it's like, well, there's a little bit of recharging the batteries and sleeping in your own bed, which is always nice. But I find that the familiarity of my surroundings, which has happened a lot this year, or the over familiarity this year, has weighed on me. And I get the feeling back of being away by exploring new places where I am. So even in this time, with COVID, I will find new places where I can, ride my bike, or I can hike. And, I still get a little bit of that adventure, newness, new feeling out of doing that. I also, when I look back over my photos and I edit my photos and think about, actually, I can look at every photo I have, and I have thousands of photos, and I know what I was doing when I took that picture. I know where it was, and I'm like reliving it. I'm reliving it when I'm looking at them. So that will help me out as well. But I've come to realize that the long-term answer for me is to live, kind of be a bit of a digital nomad, and to spend a part of the time, part of the year away, and part of the year home, and have that just be part of who I am. And I've started looking into how that might be and how that works and what that schedule might look like. So what I've found, so related to this, so this is sort of the same thing that a lot of people get hung up on, is like they have this idea and they don't know how to make it work. So they think like, well, this will never work because I don't know how to do it. Well, I didn't know how to do this. But every time you take a little step and start asking questions of somebody, or start doing a little bit of research, you begin to chip away at that wall that something is not possible. And usually a life change is not going to be flipping a switch. A career change is not going to be flipping a switch. It's more gradual. And so, but we can get stuck in our heads like, oh my gosh, I could never do that. It's not I don't know how to do it, because you could learn how to do anything. I mean, if I could say I couldn't be, I don't know how to be a baker. I don't know how to bake. Well, I could learn to bake if I wanted to be a baker.
Mhm.
But if I wanted to own a bakery, I wouldn't just turn up one day at a bakery and be the owner. I would learn from other bakers. I would speak to other bakers. I would learn from people who worked in bakeries what it's really like. And so my big change, and I would say, I would recommend to anybody who's anticipating or wants to do a change, they have kind of an idea what it might be, is to just sort of start immersing yourself, put a toe, maybe that's not immersing, put a toe in the water of what that other thing might be. There are lots of groups online from people with different interests. So I joined a group that was, digital nomads, a Facebook group of digital nomads. I joined a group of expats in Peru. I joined a group of people who were RV owners. And by asking questions, I began to chip away at this thought that I could never do that. I began, oh, that's not so hard. I could kind of do that. I can ask questions, and I can learn, and I can gradually move into this other thing. And that's the way it works with somebody who's looking to change careers as well, is you're not going to go from being A to B in one day. You're going to understand what it is that you value and the things that you like to do. I'm not talking about like Excel and write speeches, even though, that there's something about those things though that make them enjoyable, which can point to other things that you might want to do. Because the world is full of people who are good at things, but hate it. Many people went to college and took a job in accounting, law, biology. I don't know what it is, whatever it is. And yeah, and they do it and they don't like it, but they figure, well, what am I supposed to do? And there's actually a name for those people. It's called success disasters. Because if they were lousy at it, they would have left it a long time ago. But they're good. And in our society, we prize material gain, and we prize skill mastery. Very rarely do we tell people coming out of college or looking for a new job to find fulfillment. What do you like? What do you think you'd like? People think that that's selfish, that it's mushy, it's woo-woo. But they end up getting to a point in their life where they've been doing something for a while and they feel like, oh man, I'm just tired doing this, but I don't know, is it selfish for me to want to do something that fills me up? No, it's not selfish at all. In fact, you'll feel a lot better and you probably will live longer than dragging yourself to work every day.
Yeah, that idea that maybe that's exactly why we're here is to find things that fill us up, do that, because maybe that's just exactly the unique spark we're meant to bring into this world and how we can best serve.
Yes, because we are born with a lot of potential, and through a variety of circumstances and family and society, we're molded in certain ways, and that essence of who you are. And there's a great exercise that I've done where I looked at a picture of myself as a 7-year-old. And I just it was a guided meditation that I did, someone did with me, and of me imagining that 7-year-old and what that 7-year-old was about and what that 7-year-old's essence was, and getting back to that. And I still have that picture over there. And sometimes I will look at it when I'm having a tough day and go, what's that 7-year-old about? Get back to that 7-year-old, so there is something in us that we want to explore, that we want to get out there, our true selves, and it's okay. I think men have a bigger problem with it than women. Men are supposed to be stoic and
logical. Stay the course, stay your lane. Yeah.
Stay in your lane, and they bottle up a lot. A lot of men are brought up with the sense that your feelings don't matter, and that all that matters is being a provider. And so they go through life just, like deer in the headlights, of just that their feelings don't matter until, things get bad. So for men to be able to feel like it's okay to want to be happy is real important, and to be able to express that is real important.
Thank you for saying that. I agree with that so much, and it's different for to hear it from a man, I think, than women saying, oh, you know, your feelings may deserve to be happy. So thank you for recognizing it and for sharing it. I just have two more questions.
Sure.
One is because the show is dirt roady, and it feels like through your own journeys that maybe haven't all been paved in gold, you've learned a lot about yourself and maybe your connection to that bigger thing, either inside or outside yourself, however you see that. So I'd love to know kind of what you believe along those lines, knowing there's no wrong answer, but just what is the way your life, the way it's unfolded, what has it brought you to believe about either the spiritual topics or why it's important to allow the sage and your happiness to kind of lead the show.
Oh gosh. I will say what I've learned from a sort of spiritual sense is I was so I'm Jewish, and I can't say at this point in my life I am I'm more cultural than I am practicing at this point. But what I learned from my travels around the world, being exposed to other religions, especially to Islam and Buddhism, was an incredible experience, and learning about those and going into their temples of worship and taking part in those ceremonies. I had a Buddhist monk do a prayer and put something on I forget the name, on my forehead in Sri Lanka, and another one say a prayer and tie a string around my arm in a very holy place. And I was just like, I was so in awe about that. Actually, I had another one who wanted to talk with me about my journey and brought me into the monks' quarters, and we talked there, which was really, I like, where am I going here? And one more thing that I did that really was eye-opening. In many places, the mosques are not open to non-Muslims, and in Hong Kong, I walked up to the mosque, a big mosque, and I said, "Can I come in?" He said, "Oh, please have a look around." And that was just really the first time I'd ever done that, and that was just really interesting. It was humbling to be able to be in someone else's house of prayer. It always is, because that's important to some people on a very deep level, and for them to allow me to come in as a visitor, as an observer, and see that part of their life, I am just humbled by that. To be able to see that. So it has made me more appreciative of how we're all alike in this part of our lives. And, all the Abrahamic religions, am I pronouncing that right? We're very similar in many ways, we're different in many ways, but we all have this thing within us that we hold dearly and that we want to express. I would say that's what I've learned, and I've just been humbled by what people have shared with me about their own beliefs and their own practices.
Beautiful. That's cool. Thank you for sharing that. And it's amazing to me how being in different countries with an open some curiosity and an open heart, how much we're not criticizing and condemning, when we don't contempt before investigation, when we don't follow that path, but rather are curious and look for similarities and the things that bring us together rather than divide us. It's just what a different experience life is. How can people reach you? People are ready to burn the boat. How do they work with you? How do they talk to you?
Well, I've got a couple websites. My life-changing, career-changing website is burnthebo.at. It looks like burn the boat. It's bo.at. And I've got a website where I talk about my travels and my experiences and have photos and videos there, and that's explorewithkeith.com. And there's a link there back to the other one as well. But I'm also on LinkedIn at Keith Finger, and always love to talk and connect with people, even if it's just to share travel stories and experiences. One of the interesting things about this time has just been able to is being more open. I will say, to just Zoom calls with folks, just to chat and just to kind of relieve some pressure with people and explore. So always looking to talk with folks and learn more about them.
Perfect. Well, I will take that information and make sure to put it in the show notes as well, so folks can easily click and find you. Because I think, and from what just from the conversations that I've had with you, that we've you are such a wealth of knowledge and insight and perspective, and yeah, you're funny. It would be fun, to have the chance to work with you. But you're the kind of person, it seems to me, who puts a priority on lifting other people up in a no BS way, but helping others see the best in themselves and in what's possible. And I just think we need more of that in this world. So thank you for being that person.
Well, thank you. That has been something which came later in life as I explored my true self and how I wanted to connect with people, and I had denied it for a long time, and was able to find that, and I do enjoy it very much. Thank you for that.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your stories and your insights and wisdom. And to everyone who's watching and listening, thank you for being a part of this journey as well. We appreciate you. If you these conversations are also available on YouTube. So if you're not subscribed there, please go to Lisa Wade Out at YouTube, and you can subscribe and get update information about all the upcoming conversations as well. Also the podcast. So if you go to Spotify or iTunes or any of your favorite podcasts, you can find Dirt Road Divinity there too. I'd love if you'd come subscribe, give it a like if you've enjoyed the conversation. Greatly appreciate that. Any last words, Mr. Finger?
Oh gosh, my last words would be: do what's in your heart. Do what is in your heart, and don't wait too long.